Sawadee Kap. Hello and welcome to Daily Wisdom, Walking the Path with the Buddha. Today is our Pali Canon and English study group where we're studying the words of the Buddha. We're in volume 3, which is titled Foundation in the Teachings. We're going to be exploring chapters 61 through 70 today. And the way that we do this program is more like a study group where I invite students in Zoom to be able to read the chapter. Then I'm going to share some teachings on that. And then I'm going to open up to questions, whether you're in Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom. You can ask questions by putting that in the comment section, or in Zoom, you can electronically raise your hand in order to ask questions or in order to volunteer to read. Oftentimes, students are reading these chapters either before or during or after class, so that way you can understand not only the words of the Buddha, but the guidance that I'm sharing that helps you to be able to implement the teachings into your day-to-day life. And this is really helping you to form a kind of a more full framework of the teachings of the Buddha, where all the other programs that we have, it helps you to establish a foundation or a framework. And this program helps you to kind of fill that in. So I'll show you guys how this works. Is there anybody in Zoom who would like to volunteer to read this first chapter? All right, looks like Pat. Go ahead, sir.
The preservation of truth. But Master Gotama, in what way is there the preservation of truth? How does one preserve truth? We asked Master Gotama about the preservation of truth. If a person has confidence, he preserves truth when he says, "My confidence is thus," but he does not yet come to the definite conclusion. Only this is true, anything else is wrong. If a person approves of something, he preserves truth when he says, "My approval of something is thus," but he does not yet come to the definite conclusion. Only this is true, anything else is wrong. If he receives an oral tradition, he preserves truth when he says, "My receiving of the oral tradition is thus," but he does not yet come to the definite conclusion. Only this is true, anything else is wrong. If he reaches a conclusion based on reasoned reflection, he preserves truth when he says, "My reaching of a conclusion based on reasoned reflection is thus," but he does not yet come to the definite conclusion. Only this is true, anything else is wrong. If he gains a reflective understanding of a view, he preserves truth when he says, "My reflective understanding of a view is thus," but he does not yet come to the definite conclusion. Only this is true, anything else is wrong. In this way, too, there is the preservation of truth. In this way, he preserves truth. In this way, we describe the preservation of truth, but as yet, there is no discovery of truth. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Pat. So what we're going to do here is we're going to explore a few discourses where the Buddha is helping you to be able to understand how to speak the truth, because there's times where you're speaking and you've been exposed to a certain thing, and there could be other information out there that you don't know, that if you speak in absolutes, it could make what you're saying to be false and untrue. And now when people discover that falsehood, to them, it could look like you're telling a deliberate lie, or that you're not trustworthy and reliable and dependable, or that you're just unwise. So the Buddha is teaching you how to not speak in absolutes unless you know something is absolutely true with 100% certainty. So if you've been exposed to something and there could potentially be some understanding out there that you don't have, there's ways for you to speak that you can preserve the truth. So what the Buddha teaches you is to say things like, "in my opinion," or "based on what I've been exposed to," or "based on my understanding." And now you speak in that way and you're preserving truth. Because if there's some new information out there that becomes known at some point, well, that's new information, and you've spoken in a way that preserves truth. Because you say, "based on my experience, based on what I know about this topic, or based on what I have seen," right? You use these types of prefaces in the way that you're prefacing a certain statement, and now you're preserving the truth. Because even if that new information is found out and discovered at some point, then you've still spoken the truth. Whereas if you speak in absolutes and you say, "this is the way it is," and now this new information is found out, then that statement that you said 6 months ago or 3 years ago is untrue. And now people discover that what you're saying is untrue. So you'd like to learn how to not speak in absolutes unless it's something you've independently verified. Like, for example, we can say with 100% certainty, the cause of discontentedness is craving, desire, attachment. That is absolutely the cause of discontentedness. We don't have to say, based in my opinion, based on my thoughts, based on what I know, based on my experience. You can just say with 100% certainty, look someone in the eyes, and if you've independently verified that truth, you know that it's true because you've arrived at final knowledge or final truth on that particular thing. So the Buddha is going to give you 3 discourses here to show you how when you don't quite yet know and haven't quite yet verified, or there could be some information that's new that comes about, you can preface your statement with these kinds of things. In my opinion, based on what I know, based on what I've been exposed to, the way that I think about this, or the way that I've been exposed to this. You can use all these different ways in order to preface what it is that you have to say, and this preserves your truth. And now you can maintain your reliability, your trustworthiness, and people can understand that you're potentially speaking about something in a wise way. So do you guys have any questions on this discourse? You can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and ask any questions that you like. Okay, I don't see any questions anywhere. So let's go to the next chapter. This is chapter 62, the discovery of truth. Because prior, you didn't quite maybe understand the truth 100%. Now the Buddha is going to talk about the discovery of truth. Is there someone who would like to read this one? Okay, Samantha, go ahead, ma'am.
The discovery of truth. But in what way, Master Gotama, is there the discovery of truth? In what way does one discover truth? We asked Master Gotama about the discovery of truth. Here, Bharavaja, a monk may be living in dependence on some village or town. Then a householder or householder's son goes to him and investigates him in regard to 3 kinds of states. In regards to states based on craving and greed, in regard to states based on anger and hatred, in regard to states based on ignorance and delusion. Are there in this Venerable One any states based on craving or greed, such that, with his mind obsessed by those states, while not knowing, he might say, I know, or while not seeing, he might say, I see, or he might urge others to act in a way that would lead to their harm and discontentedness for a long time? As he investigates him, he comes to know there are no such states based on craving and greed in this Venerable One. The bodily behavior and the verbal behavior of this Venerable One are not those of one affected by craving and greed. And the teachings that this Venerable One teaches are profound, hard to see and hard to understand, peaceful and superb, unattainable by mere reasoning, subtle, to be experienced by the wise. These teachings cannot easily be taught by one affected by craving and greed. When he has investigated him and has seen that he is purified from states based on craving and greed, he next investigates him in regard to states based on anger and hate. Are there in this Venerable One any states based on anger and hate, such that, with his mind obsessed by those states, while not knowing, he might say, I know, or while not seeing, he might say, I see, or he might urge others to act in a way that would lead to their harm and discontentedness for a long time? As he investigates him, he comes to know there are no such states based on anger and hate in this Venerable One. The bodily behavior and the verbal behavior of this Venerable One are not those of one affected by anger and hate. And the teachings that this Venerable One teaches are profound, hard to see and hard to understand, peaceful and superb, unattainable by mere reasoning, subtle to be experienced by the wise. These teachings cannot be easily taught by one affected by anger and hate. When he has investigated him and has seen that he is purified from states based on anger and hate, he next investigates him in regard to states based on ignorance and delusion. Are there in this Venerable One any states based on ignorance and delusion, such that, with his mind obsessed with the states, while not knowing, he might say, I know, or while not seeing, he might say, I see, or he might urge others to act in a way that would lead to their harm and discontentedness for a long time. As he investigates them, he comes to know there are no such states based on ignorance and delusion in this Venerable One. The bodily behavior and the verbal behavior of this Venerable One are not those of one affected by ignorance and delusion. And the teachings that this Venerable One teaches are profound, hard to see and hard to understand, peaceful and superb, unattainable by mere reasoning, subtle, to be experienced by the wise. These teachings cannot easily be taught by one affected by ignorance and delusion. When he has investigated him and has seen that he is purified from states based on ignorance and delusion, he then places confidence in him. Filled with confidence, he visits him and pays respect to him. Having paid respect to him, he gives ear. When he gives ear, he hears the teachings. Having heard the teachings, he memorizes them and examines the meaning of the teachings he has memorized. When he examines their meaning, he gains a reflective understanding of those teachings. When he has gained a reflective understanding of those teachings, enthusiasm springs up. When enthusiasm has sprung up, he applies his will. Having applied his will, he investigates thoroughly. Having investigated thoroughly, he applies effort and energy through purposeful striving. Determined to apply effort and energy through striving, he realizes the ultimate truth and seeks it by penetrating it with wisdom. In this way, Bharavaja, there is the discovery of truth. In this way, one discovers truth. In this way, we describe the discovery of truth. But as yet, there is no final arrival at truth.
All right. Thank you, Samantha. So here the Buddha is talking about how do you discover truth? Well, ultimately what he describes is having a teacher that isn't affected by craving, anger, and ignorance. Those are the three poisons or the three unwholesome roots. These are the pollutions that would keep a mind in the unenlightened state. If somebody is enlightened, they would have eliminated these pollutions, and they would thus then be teaching and sharing the teachings that it takes for you to then discover the truth. So this first part of the discourse, he's talking about investigating and kind of observing whether this individual who you're potentially going to be learning from has craving, anger, and ignorance. And you would like to do that in a non-judgmental way, that you can oversee this person by spending time with them or observing their interactions and the way that they interact, whether or not they're operating through craving, anger, and ignorance. And if you see that, then you would know that you can't discover truth with this person. But if you see that this person has eliminated craving, anger, and ignorance, or working towards the removal of that, then you know that this person has discovered a certain amount of truth to be able to then share that truth with others. Because what the Buddha is saying here is that it's not easy to share these teachings when you're affected by craving, anger, and ignorance. Because if you can imagine a teacher, if they were trying to share the teachings of how to eliminate craving, anger, and ignorance, but yet they're affected by it themselves, meaning that let's just say that they have a craving for a certain number of students in class. And when that number of students isn't there, they're grumpy and irritable and angry. Or say that when students ask questions, they get agitated or annoyed and frustrated, things like this, right? So you need to be able to learn from somebody who's not agitated and frustrated, that's got this craving. Therefore, they've eliminated their ignorance, and you'd be able to then cultivate wisdom from learning from that person. If you notice here throughout this different paragraphs, the Buddha says one teaches are profound, hard to see and hard to understand, peaceful and superb, unattainable by mere reasoning to be experienced by the wise. What the Buddha is referring to here is that an unenlightened being attempting to learn these teachings, there's almost like a veil of ignorance that's over your mind. And it's very challenging for the unenlightened mind to peer through that. In my opinion, the Buddhist teachings are very clear, concise, and precise. You can very clearly see what it is that he's teaching, but that's not always the case. When you're in the unenlightened state and you haven't really explored these teachings and penetrated into them, this veil of ignorance is over the mind, and it makes it very challenging to be able to understand. So that's why the Buddha says that the teachings are hard to see and hard to understand. That's because of this veil of ignorance. But when you peel that back through learning, investigating, and examining through reflecting and through practicing, that's what's going to actually help you to step through that veil of ignorance and be able to get to these wise teachings. So you need to first have a teacher who's not affected by craving, anger, and ignorance. And then what the Buddha is saying down here is, okay, once you've identified that this individual is not affected by craving, anger, and ignorance, meaning they're either enlightened or close to it, now you place your confidence in that person. And when you have confidence in that person, you then visit that person and pay respect to them, right? Because if they're going to teach you, they're doing it out of the kindness of their heart. They're not asking for money or any benefit for themselves. They're not having any expectations of you. Instead, they're just helping you out of the kindness of their heart. So you would visit this person that you have confidence in and you pay respect to them in order to build this relationship. And now after having paid respect, you give ear, meaning you eagerly listen to the teachings. You actively learn what it is that they're sharing, because if they have either gotten to enlightenment or they're close to it, whatever they're sharing as teachings is going to lead to your enlightenment. So you need to eagerly listen to what it is that this individual's teaching. Now, having heard the teachings, you memorize them, right? During the lifetime of the Buddha, you had to memorize all the teachings, where today it's really mainly the Eightfold Path that you need to memorize, right? And all the others, you need to gain an understanding of them, but you don't really need to memorize, every single teaching the way you did during the lifetime of the Buddha. Then as you memorize the teachings, or you have the teachings in books and videos and podcasts, you examine the meaning of those teachings that you've memorized or that you're exploring. When you examine those meaning, now that's the learning, investigating part. Now you move into reflection, that you gain this reflective understanding of the teachings, that you start looking to see through your own direct experience, is this teaching potentially true or false? And now when you start reflecting on that teaching and you realize, oh my gosh, this teaching is true. When I used to drink alcohol, yeah, I had all these kinds of problems. Or when I used to steal, oh my gosh, I used to have all these problems. Or these other things that the Buddha teaches. When I used to have all this argumentative speech, yeah, my friends went away from me and I used to have broken relationships. You gain this reflective understanding that you've investigated the teachings and you've examined that the Buddha is saying it's unwise to use substances. It's unwise to steal. It's unwise to have argumentative speech. So you learn that intellectually, but then when you reflect against your own direct experience in this life, you start to realize that these teachings are true. And that's where enthusiasm springs up. Oh my gosh, I'm finally getting access to the true teachings that's going to guide me in this life. One of the ways that I think about the teachings of the Buddha is like an instruction manual. Pretty much everything and anything these days has an instruction manual. Back in Chiang Mai on my desk, I have a pitcher of water that I use in order to drink when I'm sitting at my desk. I'm pretty sure that pitcher of water probably came with an instruction manual, right? Pretty much everything these days comes with an instruction manual, but nobody gives us an instruction manual for this being who we are. How do you operate this thing, right? That's what the 6 sense bases are. That's what the 4 noble truths are. That's what the Eightfold Path is. It's this instruction manual to life and how to get along peacefully as this being who you are. And when you start getting this reflective understanding of the teachings, this enthusiasm springs up like, oh my gosh, this stuff is actually really true. I can see that through my own experiences. And now there's this will that comes, this will to now actually potentially apply these teachings, right? This initiative, this willingness to walk forward with the teachings. Now you more fully and thoroughly investigate the teachings. Then you apply your effort and energy towards this purposeful striving to implement the teachings on a day-to-day basis. And as you're implementing those teachings through your practice, that's where you start to discover the truth. And that's where this wisdom starts to come in. So what the Buddha is talking about is finding a teacher who you have confidence in, you visit, you pay respect to them, you learn the teachings, you investigate and examine them, you reflect on them to independently verify them, and you're going to see this enthusiasm and this willingness to implement the teachings comes into the mind. And now you apply the teachings in your practice, and that's where you start discovering the truth, and that's where you start discovering the wisdom. But you haven't come to final arrival at the truth yet. You've only discovered it, and now you're starting to implement it. And now the next discourse is going to give us the final arrival at truth. So does anybody have any questions on this discourse? Okay, it looks like Samantha, maybe. Go ahead, ma'am.
I don't really have a question. I just wanted to make a comment that I had been attempting to study Buddhism for a couple of years in the States, and it was not making sense. It wasn't sticking with me, and yet I felt like the philosophy behind it and whatnot was something that I wanted to investigate. And then the first class that I took with you it was profound. It was like reading finally the instruction manual in English instead of a different language. And I truly appreciate having met you, and that just, one class made the difference. Just speaking the language and doing it in a way that was easy to follow and was logical. And I think even in that first class, I had a few insights, and I was just amazed at the difference in having a teacher that knows the truth and is speaking from a well-founded base like the Pali Canon instead of maybe what we learn in the West. It's quite different what I've been learning with you, and I really appreciate it.
Yeah, you're welcome, Samantha. Very pleased to help you and help everybody else that's interested in understanding these teachings, because when you study the true words of the Buddha, you see it's true and it works, and it's so beautiful to finally find the true teachings after all these years and kind of get the cheat codes to life.
Feel like it.
Yeah, it's like if you play video games, you get these cheat codes that allow you to function in the video game in a much better and easier way. And it's the same thing, that these teachings are so true. And once you get access to them, it's like, wow, your eyes just open up. And that's what it means to become awake and not sleep anymore, that you've got this wisdom. So very pleased to share the teachings of the Buddha with you.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And I see the rest of you guys there saying you agree too. So very pleased to help all of you guys. Okay, I don't see any questions anywhere else. So let's go to the final arrival at truth, chapter 63. Is there someone who would like to read this? Okay, it looks like Pat. Go ahead, sir.
The final arrival at truth. But in what way, Master Gotama, is there the final arrival at truth? In what way does one finally arrive at truth? We ask Master Gotama about the final arrival at truth. The final arrival at truth, Bhagavaja, lies in the repetition, development, and cultivation of those same things. In this way, Bhagavaja, there is the final arrival at truth, wisdom. In this way, one finally arrives at truth. In this way, we describe the final arrival at truth. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. So that previous discourse where the Buddha is talking about the discovery of truth, that's how you get to the final arrival at truth. Because there's the learning and investigation and examining of the teachings. There's the reflective understanding where it's like, wow, this looks like it's really true. But it's when you're practicing the teachings under repetitive development, where you're cultivating those teachings and you're practicing them on a day-to-day basis, that's where you see the truth. Because let's just take something like the 5 factors of well-spoken speech, right? You speak at the proper time, what you say is true, gentle, beneficial, with a mind of loving kindness. You can investigate and examine those and understand what they are. Then you can even reflect on it and you'd be like, oh my goodness, when I speak that way, yeah, my conversations go so much better. Or when I haven't spoke that way, my conversations don't go well at all, right? And you can look backwards over your life when you first learn the 5 factors of well-spoken speech. You can be like, wow, these look like they're really true. But then when you start practicing them, and it's 6 months, it's 1 year, it's 2 years, you've been practicing these 5 factors of well-spoken speech in your day-to-day relationships, and you see how your relationships improve. You see that things go so much better. You see this harmony coming into your relationships. It's that repetitive development and cultivation of something like the 5 factors of well-spoken speech that you're like, this is the truth. And now it's the final arrival at truth. You know with 100% certainty that this teaching is true. And now you've got wisdom because you've done that through your own direct experience. You've arrived at the truth. And now you know with 100% certainty, nobody can ever shake you off of that truth because you've seen that those 5 factors of well-spoken speech have led to so much improvement in your day-to-day life that now there's nobody that could ever convince you that it would be wise to speak with inner hate, or that it would be wise to interrupt people, or it would be wise to speak harsh and hostile and bitter. Nobody could ever convince you of that because you know the wisdom. Your mind is unshakable on that topic. And it takes you time to arrive at that truth because there's the investigation, there's the reflection, and then there's the practice. And you need to implement the teachings in practice to be able to see that truth and finally arrive at it where you have wisdom and now your mind is unshakable. So it's this repetitive development and cultivation of those teachings that you're practicing in your day-to-day life that's going to help you to finally arrive at truth and wisdom. So let me know what questions you guys have here on this chapter. Okay, I don't see any questions anywhere. So now let's go to chapter 64. Is there someone who would like to read this? All right, Kristen, go ahead, ma'am.
Thank you, teacher. 5 future dangers in the way for consideration. Monks, there are these 5 future dangers in the way of reflecting on which the diligent, dedicated, determined monk, forest gone, ought to live just to attain the unattained, to master the unmastered, to realize the unrealized. What 5? 1. Take the case of a monk who reflects thus. I am now young, a mere youth, black-haired and endowed with the beauty of youth and the prime of life. But there will come a time when old age shall touch this body, and when grown old and overcome by age, it is not easy to attend to Buddha's teachings. It is not easy to retreat to the forest's wilderness. Before that comes to me, unwished for, undesirable, disagreeable condition comes upon me, let me in advance arouse energy for the attainment of the unattained, to master the unmastered, to realize the unrealized. Then when I am in that condition, I will reside at ease, even though I am old. This is the first future danger to consider, which is enough for a monk to reside diligent, dedicated, determined for the attainment of the unattained. 2. Again he reflects, I have health and well-being, a good digestion which is never too cold nor too heated, but moderate and suitable for striving. But there will come a time when sickness shall touch this body, and sick and ill, it is not easy to attend to the Buddha's teachings. It is not easy to retreat to the forest wilderness. Before that comes to me, unwished for, undesirable, disagreeable condition comes upon me, let me in advance arouse energy for the attainment of the unattained, to master the unmastered, to realize the unrealized. Then when I am in that condition, I will reside at ease, even though I am sick. This is the second future danger to consider, which is enough for a monk to reside diligent, dedicated, determined for the attainment of the unattained. 3. Again he reflects, food is now plentiful, there has been a good harvest and food is easy to get, and it is easy to keep oneself going by gathering. But there will come a time when there is famine, bad harvest, and difficulty in getting food, when it will be hard to keep oneself going by gathering. And in a time of famine, people will move to where there is plentiful food, and there one will dwell in living conditions that are congested and crowded. It is not easy to attain the Buddha's teachings. It is not easy to retreat to the forest wilderness. Before that comes to me, unwished for, undesirable, disagreeable condition come upon me, let me in advance arouse energy for the attainment of the unattained, to master the unmastered, to realize the unrealized. Then when I am in that condition, I will reside at ease, even though food is not plentiful. This is the third future danger to consider, which is enough for a monk to reside diligent, dedicated, determined for the attainment of the unattained. 4. Again he reflects, Now men reside in friendly fellowship together, blending like milk and water, without disputes, but viewing each other with eyes of affection. But there will come a time of fear of robbers, and people of countryside will mount their vehicles and flee. Fear-stricken men will move away from where there is safety, and their one will dwell in living conditions that are congested and crowded. It is not easy to attain the Buddha's teachings. It is not easy to retreat to the forest wilderness. Before that comes to me, unwished for, undesirable, disagreeable things come upon me, let me in advance arouse energy for the attainment of the unattained, to master the unmastered, to realize the unrealized. Then I am in that condition. I will reside at ease, even in a time of fear. This is the fourth future danger to consider, which is enough for a monk to reside diligent, dedicated, determined for the attainment of the unattained. 5. Moreover, the monk reflects thus: now the community lives in friendly fellowship together, finding comfort in one teaching. But the time will come when the community will be fractured. And when that happens, it is not easy to attain the Buddha's teachings. It is not easy to retreat to the forest wilderness. Before that comes to me, unwished for, undesirable, disagreeable condition comes upon me, let me in advance arouse energy for the attainment of the unattained, to master the unmastered, to realize the unrealized. Then when I am in that condition, I will reside at ease, even though the community is fractured. This is the fifth future danger to consider, which is enough for a monk to reside diligent, dedicated, determined, for the attainment of the unattained. Monks, there are these 5 future dangers in the way to consider, which the diligent, dedicated, determined monk, forest gone, ought to live, just to attain the unattained, to master the unmastered, to realize the unrealized. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, ma'am. So if you guys can think back to the chapters we were exploring last week, where the Buddha was talking about how to remain diligent and how an individual resides complacent, these chapters are a continuation of that, because the unenlightened mind tends to be fairly complacent. You know, if you've studied the 5 realms of existence with me, I talk about how the heavenly realm, those beings are very complacent because they only experience pleasant feelings. They tend to not be dedicated and determined to be able to get to enlightenment, even though they can. But here in the human realm, we have built-in motivation because we experience not just the pleasant feelings, but the painful ones and the neither painful nor pleasant. And the unenlightened mind doesn't like those painful feelings and the neither painful nor pleasant feelings. So we tend to have built-in motivation. But even with that built-in motivation, there's still a massive amount of complacency here in the human realm. And the Buddha is talking about these 5 future dangers that are going to be experienced. And if you understand that these 5 future dangers exist, then that can arise diligence, dedication, and determination in the mind to apply effort and energy now to be able to make your way to enlightenment, so that way when these 5 future things happen, you're at ease because you've trained your mind and you're comfortable with this impermanence. Because what the Buddha is talking about are these 5 things that are going to occur potentially, and now there's this impermanence that's being experienced. But if you've already trained your mind in the teachings and you're already either enlightened or close to it, when these 5 future things are happening, you can be at ease. So this first one, he's talking about now you're young, and you know, some of us are young, maybe others, maybe we're not so young, or maybe we think in the mind that we're young, but nonetheless, if we think that now we're young, that at some point there's this old age that's going to come. And as old age comes, it's a lot more challenging to learn and practice these teachings. So the earlier in your life that you learn and practice these teachings, the more straightforward it'll be, because your mind is in a better place. Whereas if you haven't trained your mind your entire life and you just wait until 80, 90, 100 years old to be able to train, now it's a lot more challenging for your mind because you've accumulated a lot more pollution, and it's not so easy to do these kinds of things when you're older. So the Buddha is encouraging you to do this as young as possible. Wherever you come in contact with the teachings, that's where you come in contact with the teachings, right? If it's 60, 70, 80 years old that you come in contact with the teachings, there's never a bad time to actually start learning these teachings. But what he's saying is it's better to do it the earlier you can in life, because then you can just enjoy the rest of your life as you've getting closer and closer to this enlightened mental state. Then he talks about this digestion, which is really important part of health. That this is one of the reasons why, like in Thailand, they eat spicy food, because it helps to keep the digestion going. Because if your body gets backed up with food, it can cause a lot of pain in the stomach and in the bowels and stuff like this. So you would like to maintain your digestion. But during the lifetime of the Buddha, there wasn't so easy to necessarily do that because of the types of food that they were eating, that sometimes the digestion wasn't so good and it would cause a lot of pain in the body. So there's some impermanence there that can occur, and this sickness that is coming towards the body, that it's not easy to actually train while you're sick. But you've already trained and now the body's getting sick, now you can be at ease. Then the third one here, the Buddha's talking about food, and that if there's plentiful food, now that's great. Go ahead and train now, because in the future, impermanence is going to come, and that's not the case. And now people are going to be congregated in the area where there's a lot of food, and now people are going to be uncomfortable because it's so congested with lots of people and it's crowded. But if you've already trained your mind, you can be at ease in that situation. Then he talks here about the friendly fellowship of blending like milk and water, that people aren't fearful, right? But then once the fear comes in, and there's this fear of robbers and the city is overrun with crime, that's impermanence that can happen to any particular town. And now people are going to run away. And now once again, you're living in crowded, congested environment where that's excuse me, that's a lot more challenging to learn and practice the teachings in that time. But if you're at ease and you're living in a place that you're not experiencing the overrunning of criminal activity, it can be a lot easier for you to practice and learn the teachings and now train your mind, so that when this future time comes, you can be at ease. And then lastly, he talks about the breaking up of the community. This is where just one place that the Buddha is predicting that his teachings diminish. He talks about it in more detail in other places, but when he was alive, the community was very strong and very vibrant, and you really need a strong community in order to be able to get to enlightenment, because you're going to learn from the teacher, but you're going to learn from other members of the community too. And while the Buddha was alive, he had this very strong, very vibrant community of students that were supporting each other in their growth and development towards enlightenment. But he knew that that wasn't always going to be the case, that eventually this community was going to fracture and it was going to start to fall apart more and more and more. And as that occurs, then you don't have that same support to be able to get to enlightenment. So he was encouraging his students to be diligent, dedicated, and determined to be able to attain the unattained during this period of time where the community was nice and strong. So these are the 5 future dangers, or 5 future impermanence that is going to occur, and you would like to be able to train now, because when those 5 future things are occurring, then it's going to make it a lot more challenging for you to be able to train your mind and get to enlightenment. So any questions here that you guys have on this chapter, you can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and ask any questions that you like. All right, I don't see any questions. So now we'll go to the next chapter. This is chapter 65. Is there someone who would like to read this one? Okay, looks like Samantha.
When the mind becomes sluggish. On an occasion, monks, when the mind becomes sluggish, it is untimely to develop the enlightenment factor of tranquility, the enlightenment factor of concentration, and the enlightenment factor of equanimity. For what reason? Because the mind is sluggish, monks, and it is difficult to arouse it with those things. Suppose, monks, a man wants to make a small fire flare up. If he throws wet grass, wet cow dung, and wet timber into it, sprays it with water, and scatters soil over it, would he be able to make that small fire flare up? No, venerable sir. So too, monks, on an occasion when the mind becomes sluggish, it is untimely to develop the enlightenment factor of tranquility, the enlightenment factor of concentration, and the enlightenment factor of equanimity. For what reason? Because the mind is sluggish, monks, and it is difficult to arouse it with those things. On an occasion, monks, when the mind becomes sluggish, it is timely to develop the enlightenment factor of investigation, the enlightenment factor of energy, and the enlightenment factor of joy. For what reason? Because the mind is sluggish, monks, and it is easy to arouse it with those things. Suppose, monks, a man wants to make a small fire flare up. If he throws dry grass, dry cow dung, and dry timber into it, blows on it, and does not scatter soil over it, would he be able to make that small fire flare up? Yes, venerable sir. So too, monks, on an occasion when the mind becomes sluggish, it is timely to develop the enlightenment factor of investigation, the enlightenment factor of energy, and the enlightenment factor of joy. For what reason? Because the mind is sluggish, monks, and it is easy to arouse it with those things.
All right. Thank you, ma'am. So again, those previous chapters were talking about determination, dedication, and diligence, and then also complacency, right? We're studying that last week as well. So what the Buddha is giving you now are the solutions of how to fix this, right? That when you're noticing your mind sluggish and dull and lethargic, there's these enlightenment factors that you can practice. Essentially, they're tools to bring the mind to the middle. And the next chapter is going to talk about when your mind's excited and overactive. There's enlightenment factors there to be able to bring the mind to the middle. There's the enlightenment factor of mindfulness, which is awareness of mind. You need to be able to always practice that. And now, when you see with your mindfulness or awareness of mind that the mind is sluggish, dull, lethargic, that's not the time to bring in tranquility, concentration, and equanimity. Instead, you would like to bring in investigation, energy, and joy. Investigation is investigation of the teachings, where you're dedicated to studying them. That's what you're doing now. Not that your mind's necessarily sluggish, but that's what you would do if the mind was sluggish, right? Because when the mind's sluggish and dull and lethargic and complacent, the mind's like, I don't want to read those books. I don't want to go to class. I don't want to meditate. I don't want to talk to the teacher. The mind just kind of pushing all this stuff away. So you would like to actually take the mind in the opposite direction, which is this keen investigation and study, examination of the teachings. And as you're doing that, there's this energy that springs up in the mind, right? And then there's this joy because you're getting the teachings that you need to be able to come out of that sluggishness. And the Buddha's using this analogy of a fire that makes it very easy for you to be able to understand what he's talking about here. So he's saying, if you wanted to make this fire flare up, if you threw wet grass, wet cow dung, wet timber, and you sprayed it with water and scattered soil all over it, would this help the fire to flare up? And the answer is no. So that wet grass, wet cow dung, wet timber, spraying water and putting soil over it, that's the tranquility, the concentration, equanimity. That's what's going to calm things down. But instead, what you would do if you'd be interested to make this fire flare up is that the Buddha is talking down here that he's saying that you would throw dry grass, dry cow dung, dry timber. You would blow on this fire and not scatter soil over it. That's what's going to make the fire flare up. And that's the investigation, the energy, and the joy. That's those enlightenment factors down here that you're actually practicing, right? That's what you would like to practice whenever the mind is sluggish. This is like a tool in your tool belt. These 7 factors of enlightenment, sometimes people think it's to determine whether you are enlightened or you aren't enlightened, but instead it's actually to bring the mind to the middle. And the more and more that you bring your mind to the middle, it'll just stay there all the time. But on your way to enlightenment, you're going to need to have this mindfulness where you overlook the mind, and where you see it's dull and lethargic and sluggish, you bring it into the middle with investigation, energy, and joy. And now we're going to explore the other side of this. Do you guys have any questions on this particular chapter? No questions here? Okay. So let's go to the next one. Would somebody like to read this one, chapter 66? All right, go ahead, Pat.
When the mind becomes excited. On an occasion, monks, when the mind becomes excited, it is untimely to develop the enlightenment factor of investigation, the enlightenment factor of energy, and the enlightenment factor of joy. For what reason? Because the mind is excited, monks, and it is difficult to calm it down with those things. Suppose, monks, a man wants to extinguish a great bonfire. If he throws dry grass, dry cow dung, and dry timber into it, blows on it, and does not scatter soil over it, would he be able to extinguish that great bonfire? No, venerable sir. So too, monks, on an occasion when the mind becomes excited, it is untimely to develop the enlightenment factor of investigation, the enlightenment factor of energy, and the enlightenment factor of joy. For what reason? Because the mind is excited, monks, and it is difficult to calm it down with those things. On an occasion, monks, when the mind becomes excited, it is timely to develop the enlightenment factor of tranquility, the enlightenment factor of concentration, and the enlightenment factor of equanimity. For what reason? Because the mind is excited, monks, and it is easy to calm it down with those things. Suppose, monks, a man wants to extinguish a great bonfire. If he throws wet grass, wet cow dung, and wet timber into it, sprays it with water, and scatters soil over it, would he be able to extinguish that great bonfire? Yes, venerable sir. So too, monks, on an occasion when the mind becomes excited, it is timely to develop the enlightenment factor of tranquility, the enlightenment factor of concentration, and the enlightenment factor of equanimity. For what reason? Because the mind is excited, monks, and it is easy to calm it down with these things. But mindfulness, monks, I say, is always useful. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Pat. So here, mindfulness, this is the very first factor of the 7 factors of enlightenment. That's the same mindfulness that you see in the Eightfold Path, where you're learning about awareness of mind in the 4 foundations of mindfulness, because you need to overlook the mind, just like a virus scanner overlooks the hard drive of a computer, and then it isolates the files and cleans it up if there's any viruses on the hard drive. It's the same thing, is that your mindfulness is overlooking the mind. And when you see it sluggish, right, you bring in investigation, energy, and joy. When you see with your mindfulness that the mind is excited, you bring in tranquility, concentration, and equanimity. That's what's going to bring it to the middle. So here we're exploring how to calm the mind down, because as you're making your way to enlightenment, you can still experience this overwhelming excitement. Oh my gosh. There's all this stuff in the mind that you're craving, and now you're finally getting your cravings met, and you don't maybe notice it until a few minutes or even a few hours down the road. And when you see that, you would like to be able to bring your mind to the middle, where you can enjoy that thing that you're doing or that thing that you're experiencing, that you can enjoy it, but you don't have this bouncing off the walls excitement. Because when you have this bouncing off the walls excitement, the mind is shaken up, it's unsteady, it's uncalm, and now you're going to make unwise decisions. So when you're noticing that excitement, that conditional feeling of excitement, that's not the time to bring in investigation, energy, and joy. So if you're noticing you're overwhelmingly excited, you wouldn't be interested to go study the teachings of the Buddha in a time like that, right? Because that's where the mind's now going to experience even more of that, right? More of that energy, more of that's going to spring up in the mind. So instead, the way that you calm it down is you bring in the tranquility, the concentration, and the equanimity. And once again, the Buddha is using this fire analogy, where you wouldn't put dry grass, dry cow dung, dry timber, blow on the fire and scatter soil over it, or not scatter soil over it, in order to calm down this fire. Because if you toss this dry grass on the fire, it's going to flare up. That's what the investigation, energy, and joy is. But instead, if you were looking to calm this fire down, what you would do is you would put on wet grass, wet cow dung, wet timber. You would spray it with water and scatter soil over it. That's what's going to calm the fire down, right? So that's what you would think of in terms of calming the mind down, is bringing in the tranquility, the concentration, and equanimity. That's what's going to calm the mind down. Because when the mind's excited, it's not concentrated. it's bouncing off the walls, and you need to focus it so that you can bring forth all your wisdom to make wiser and wiser decisions. And then it's just always useful to be practicing mindfulness at all times. But these other 6, you're only going to practice them when you see your mind sluggish. You're lifting it up with investigation, energy, and joy. And when you see your mind is excited and overactive, you bring it the tranquility, the concentration, and equanimity. Now, with that said, you can also investigate the teachings when your mind's calm, right? You don't have to wait for your mind to be sluggish in order to investigate the teachings. It's just that if you notice that your mind is sluggish, that's how you lift it out of that. So you'd like to bring your mind to the middle, and more it'll just always stay there. That's what I talk about with the piece of wood and the steel rod, grinding it back and forth. You get that groove going. Well, if your mind is outside of that groove, it's sluggish or excited. That's what you're using here to be able to bring the mind to the middle, either investigation, energy, and joy, or the tranquility, concentration, and equanimity. And then you're just always practicing mindfulness so that you can observe whether the mind's sluggish or whether it's overactive and excited. So let me know if you guys have questions here on this chapter. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions there. So now we go to chapter 67. Is there someone who would like to read this one? Okay, Kristen, go ahead, ma'am.
Thank you, teacher. 4 developments of concentration. Monks, these are the 4 developments of concentration. What 4? 1, there is a development of concentration that leads to residing peacefully in this very life. 2, there is a development of concentration that leads to obtaining wisdom and vision. 3, there is the development of concentration that leads to mindfulness and clear comprehension. 4, there is a development of concentration that leads to the destruction of taints. 1, in what, monks, is the development of concentration that leads to residing peacefully in this very life? Here, a monk distant from sense desires, distant from unwholesome mental states, enters and resides in the first jhana, which is with thinking and pondering, in seclusion, filled with excitement and joy. And with the subsiding of thinking and pondering, by gaining inner tranquility and oneness of mind, he enters and resides in the second jhana, which is without thinking and pondering, based in concentration, filled with excitement and joy. And with fading away of excitement, remaining imperturbable, unable to upset or excite, calm, serene, mindful and clearly aware, he experiences in himself the joy of which the noble ones say. Peaceful is who resides with equanimity and mindfulness. He enters the third jhana. And having given up pleasure and pain, and with the fading away of former gladness and sadness, he enters and resides in the fourth jhana, which is beyond pleasure and pain, and purified by equanimity and mindfulness. This is called the development of concentration that leads to residing peacefully in this very life. 2, and what is the development of concentration that leads to obtaining wisdom and vision? Here, a monk attends to the perception of light. He focuses on the perception of day. Thus, as by day, so as night. As at night, so by day. Thus, with the mind that is open and uncovered, he develops a mind permeating, filled with brightness. This is the development of concentration that leads to obtaining wisdom and vision. 3, and what is the development of concentration that leads to mindfulness and clear comprehension? Here, a monk knows feelings as they arise, as they remain present, as they disappear. He knows perceptions as they arise, as they remain present, as they disappear. He knows thoughts as they arise, as they remain present, as they disappear. This is the development of concentration that leads to mindfulness and clear comprehension. 4, And what is the development of concentration that leads to the destruction of taints? Here, a monk resides, reflecting on arising and vanishing in the 5 aggregates, subject to clinging. Such is form, such its origin, such its passing away, such is feeling, such its origin, such is passing away, such is perception, such its origin, such its passing away, such as volitional formations, such its origin, such its passing away, such as consciousness, such its origin, such its passing away. This is the development of concentration that leads to the destruction of the taints. These are the 4 developments of concentration. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Kristen. So here the Buddha is giving you 4 things that is going to lead to this concentration. In this first one, he's talking about it helps you to reside peaceful in this very life. And what he's talking about here are those jhanas, the 4 preliminary phases that the mind goes through before you get to the first stage of enlightenment. And what's going to lead to these jhanas is the Eightfold Path. If you learn and practice that closely, the wisdom section, the moral conduct section, and the mental discipline section, that's what leads to the jhanas, these enhanced qualities of mind that you'll experience, where the Buddha is describing what those enhanced qualities of mind are here. These are qualities that you're experiencing at all times during your day once your mind's actually in the jhanas. But what leads you to the jhanas is the Eightfold Path. So you're going to need to learn and practice that closely to be able to now experience these qualities on your way to the first stage of enlightenment. And that's going to help you reside peaceful in this very life. Then the next one, he's talking about this concentration that leads to obtaining wisdom and vision. Here, he's talking about keeping the mind bright and cheerful and radiant and uplifted. Because sometimes, depending on what's going on in your day-to-day life and what you're experiencing in your mind and what your perceptions are, any cravings that have arisen, you might kind of feel like you're dragging yourself through the day. And whenever you're noticing that, as soon as you notice that your mind's doing that, you need to bring in this brightness, this cheerfulness, keep the mind uplifted. Or you're smiling, hey, sir, how are you? Good morning, ma'am. Nice to see you. Right? You're keeping your mind bright and cheerful and uplifted. You're going into the store and you're checking out at the grocery store. Hello, good morning, or hi, good afternoon. How are you? Right? You just say some nice, pleasant things like this to the cashier rather than like, I bet your day is not going well too, right? Right? Like just instead of being like a downer about life, keep your mind bright and filled with this brightness and this radiance. And this is what helps lead to obtaining wisdom and vision. Because when your mind's bright and cheerful, you'll start thinking about the world around you and these natural laws and how to navigate the world peacefully. Where when you're dragging yourself through your day, you're not thinking about those kinds of things. So in order to cultivate this wisdom and this vision of how to get to enlightenment, you're going to need to permeate the mind with this brightness, this cheerfulness, this gladness, this radiance. So when you see your mind's lacking that, you would like to apply right effort to lift it up. It's your right mindfulness that's going to help you to be able to see that the mind's kind of dragging, but it's your right effort that's going to help you to lift the mind up. And that's the Eightfold Path that will help you to be able to understand that. Then the concentration that leads to mindfulness and clear comprehension, be able to see things very clearly, is that you know when the feelings, perceptions, and thoughts are arising, when they're present, and when they disappear. This is cultivating your mindfulness and clear comprehension. That in the unenlightened state, before we know these teachings, we don't necessarily know these things. We don't pay attention to these things. Remember, your feelings are the conditioned pleasant feelings, painful feelings, neither painful nor pleasant. Your perceptions are your views and opinions about the world. And your thoughts are just everyday thoughts or ideas that you might have, right? So when these things are arising, when they're in your mind, they're present and they're disappearing, it would be important for you to be able to be observant of those, where you know that these things are occurring. Of course, if there's any feelings in your mind, you would like to apply right effort to cut that off and let it go, getting ahead of that more and more where you're cutting it off as a bodily sensation. But you need to be able to be aware when these things are occurring. Same thing, your perceptions. Your perceptions are your views and opinions about the world that may or may not be true. When they're arising, you need to be aware of that, because if you base your decisions in your perceptions, you could be making an unwise choice. And now making that unwise choice and putting that decision out into the world, it's going to produce unwholesome results for you. So you would like to always base your decisions in truths. So if your mind's got craving, you're going to want to hurry up and make that decision. But maybe you need to take your time. Maybe you need to step back from that situation and develop your thoughts about that. You maybe haven't gotten to the point where you fully understand the situation. But when your mind's craving, you'll make decisions based on your perceptions without fully understanding the truth about a particular thing. So if you can see that your perceptions are arising, they're present, and they're disappearing, now you can make sure that you're basing your decisions in truths. And the same thing with your thoughts and ideas and things that are going through your mind. You would like to be aware of these things. And that's what the mindfulness and clear comprehension is. Then there's this destruction of the taints. That's the 10 fetters, the pollutions of the mind. There's a certain concentration that helps you to be able to accomplish that. And what the Buddha is essentially talking about here is he's talking about impermanence, that you're aware of form, feelings, perceptions, volitional formations, and consciousness, that you're aware of their origin, where they come from, which is understood through dependent origination, that you're aware of their passing away, that's the impermanence of them, right? That you would like to be aware of these kinds of things. This is ultimately what's going to help you get to the elimination of the destruction of the taints, is first understanding the universal truth of impermanence. That's what he's talking about here. So these are 4 concentrations that you need to develop as part of your journey. So let me know what questions you guys have here on this chapter. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions anywhere. So now we'll move to the next chapter. This is chapter 68. Is there someone who would like to read this? Okay, Yihang, go ahead, ma'am.
Thank you, Teacher David. Develop concentration. First discourse. Monks, develop concentration. A monk who is concentrated understands things as they really are. And what does he understand as it really is? He understands as it really is. This is discontentedness. He understands as it really is. This is the cause of discontentedness. He understands as it really is. This is the elimination of discontentedness. He understands as it really is. This is the way leading to the elimination of discontentedness. Monks, develop concentration. A monk who is concentrated understands things as they really are. Therefore, monks, an effort should be made to understand. This is discontentedness. An effort should be made to understand. This is the cause of discontentedness. An effort should be made to understand. This is the elimination of discontentedness. An effort should be made to understand. This is the way leading to the elimination of discontentedness. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, ma'am. So what's going to lead you to concentration is getting rid of the pollutions out of the mind. And you can't get rid of the pollutions out of the mind if you don't understand the Four Noble Truths. That's the very first beginning teaching. So if you're going to be interested to get to this concentration and this focus, this clarity of mind, this deep memory that I talk about, which is part of the path to enlightenment, then you're going to need to understand the Four Noble Truths. So that's understanding things as they really are. That's understanding the natural laws, because that's what the mind is unawake to. That's what the mind's lacking wisdom of. So when you understand things as they really are, it's to understand these natural laws. And the Four Noble Truths is the very first teaching to be able to understand, that's going to help you to be able to now understand how things truly are. And now when you understand that the mind has those pollutions, now you can uproot them. And that's what's going to lead to concentration, because the mind's going to be performing more and more optimally when you get rid of these pollutions out of the mind. So the Buddha is saying that you would be wise to make an effort to understand the Four Noble Truths. This is discontentedness, the cause, the elimination, and the way leading to the elimination of discontentedness. So let me know what questions you guys have here on this chapter. You can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or in Zoom. Okay, no questions. All right. So we'll move on to the next one, which is chapter 69. Is there someone who would like to read this? All right, Vibhav, go ahead, sir.
Thank you, David. Develop concentration. Second discourse. Monks develop concentration. A monk who is concentrated understands things as they really are. And what does he understand as it really is? The origination and passing away of form, the origination and passing away of feeling, the origination and passing away of perception, the origination and passing away of volition formations, the origin and passing away of consciousness. And what, monks, is the origin of form? What is the origin of feeling? What is the origin of perception? What is the origin of volition formations? What is the origin of consciousness? Here, monks, one seeks excitement, one welcomes, one remains holding. And what is it that one seeks excitement in? And what does one welcome? To what does one remain holding? One seeks excitement in form, welcomes it, and remains holding to it. As a consequence of this, excitement arises. Excitement in forms is clinging. With one's clinging is conditioned. Existence comes to be. With existence is conditioned birth. With birth is conditioned aging and death. Sorrow, grief, pain, displeasure, and despair come to be. Such is the origin of the whole mass of discontentedness. Seeks excitement and feeling, welcomes it, and remains holding to it. As a consequence of this, excitement arises. Excitement and feeling is clinging. With one's clinging as a condition, existence comes to be. With existence is conditioned birth. With birth is conditioned aging and death. Sorrow, grief, pain, displeasure, and despair come to be. Such is the origin of the whole mass of discontentedness. One seeks excitement in perception, welcomes it, and remains holding to it. As a consequence of this, excitement arises. Excitement in perception is clinging. With one's clinging as condition, existence comes to be. With existence is conditioned birth. With birth is conditioned aging and death. Sorrow, grief, pain, displeasure, and despair come to be. Such is the origin of the whole mass of discontentedness. One seeks excitement in volition formations, welcomes it, and remains holding to it. As a consequence of this, excitement arises. Excitement in volition formation is clinging. With one's clinging as conditioned, existence comes to be. With existence is conditioned birth. With birth is conditioned aging and death. Sorrow, grief, pain, displeasure, and despair come to be. Such is the origin of this whole mass of discontentedness. One seeks excitement in consciousness, welcomes it, and remains holding to it. As a consequence of this, excitement arises. Excitement in consciousness is clinging. With one's clinging as conditioned, existence comes to be. With existence as conditioned birth. With birth as conditioned aging and death. Sorrow, grief, pain, displeasure, and despair come to be. Such is the origin of this whole mass of discontentedness. This, monks, is the origin of form. This is the origin of feeling. This is the origin of perception. This is the origin of volition formation. This is the origin of consciousness. And what, monks, is passing away of form? What is the passing away of feeling? What is the passing away of perception? What is the passing away of volition formations? What is the passing away of consciousness? Here, monks, one does not seek excitement. One does not welcome. One does not remain holding. And what is it that one does not seek excitement in? One doesn't want welcome. What doesn't one remain holding? What does not seek excitement in form, does not welcome it, does not remain holding to it. As a consequence of this, excitement in form is eliminated. With the elimination of excitement comes elimination of clinging. With the elimination of clinging, elimination of existence. With the elimination of existence comes elimination of birth. With the elimination of birth comes elimination of aging and death. Sorrow, grief, pain, displeasure, and despair. Such is the elimination of this whole mass of discontentedness. One does not seek excitement in feeling, does not welcome it, does not remain holding to it. As a consequence of this, excitement in feeling is eliminated. With the elimination of excitement comes elimination of clinging. With the elimination of clinging, elimination of existence. With the elimination of existence comes elimination of birth. With the elimination of birth comes elimination of aging and death. Sorrow, grief, pain, displeasure, and despair. Such is the elimination of this whole mass of discontentedness. One does not seek excitement in perception, does not welcome it, does not remain holding to it. As a consequence of this, excitement in perception is eliminated. With the elimination of excitement comes elimination of clinging, and with elimination of clinging, elimination of existence. With the elimination of existence comes elimination of birth. With the elimination of birth comes elimination of aging and death, sorrow, grief, pain, displeasure, and despair. Such is the elimination of this whole mass of discontentedness. One does not seek excitement in volitional formations, does not welcome it, does not remain holding to it. As a consequence of this, excitement in volitional formations is eliminated. With the elimination of excitement comes elimination of with elimination of clinging, elimination of existence. With the elimination of existence comes elimination of birth. With the elimination of birth comes elimination of aging and death, sorrow, grief, pain, displeasure, and despair, such as the elimination of this whole mass of discontentedness. One does not seek excitement in consciousness, does not welcome it, does not remain holding to it. As a consequence of this, excitement in consciousness is eliminated. With the elimination of excitement comes elimination of clinging. With the elimination of clinging, elimination of existence. With the elimination of existence comes elimination of birth. With the elimination of birth comes elimination of aging and death, sorrow, grief, pain, displeasure, and despair. Such is the elimination of this whole mass of discontentedness. With the elimination of excitement comes elimination of clinging. With the elimination of clinging, elimination of existence. With the elimination of existence comes elimination of birth. With the elimination of birth comes elimination of aging and death, sorrow, grief, pain, displeasure, and despair. Such is the elimination of this whole mass of discontentedness. This, monks, is the passing away of form. This is the passing away of feeling. This is the passing away of perception. This is the passing away of volitional formations. This is the passing away of consciousness. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Vibhav. So here we've got a discourse that is, again, helping to understand the development of concentration. This is just another kind of angle to look at it through. So the Buddha is saying, what does this person understand as it really is? This is kind of leading off of that other discourse as well, that they understand impermanence. That's what he's talking about here, the impermanence of these five aggregates, that this body is not permanent. He's talking about form, feelings, perceptions, volitional formations, and consciousness. This is what makes a human being a human being. It's called the five aggregates, or makes a living being a living being. Even animals have these five aggregates as well. So you need to be able to understand impermanence. That's what he's talking about here, the impermanent nature of this existence in these five aggregates. And now an individual needs to understand the origin of these things, right? And now he kind of walks you through this. And by understanding the origin, he's also talking a little bit about dependent origination here, because that's the origin or the origination of these five aggregates and how they come to be. And when one seeks excitement in these things, that means you're seeking excitement in existence. Now, it's not talking about just enjoying existence, because by the time you get to enlightenment, you're thoroughly going to enjoy your existence. In the unenlightened state, life can sometimes feel like a drag. It can feel kind of miserable. And there can be grief and sorrow, pain, displeasure, and despair that comes into the mind. But by the time you get to enlightenment, you're not experiencing that bouncing off the wall excitement, but you're also not experiencing this dullness, this indifference, and this lethargy either. Your mind is in the middle, where you're thoroughly enjoying what it is that you're experiencing in this existence, but you understand it's impermanent and it's not going to be permanent, and that at some point this being is going to die. But in the unenlightened state, with the lack of wisdom, an individual is going to cling to this. It's going to hold on to these five aggregates and not want this life to come to an end. And now death is going to be very painful. So the Buddha is talking about letting this go and not clinging to any of this. That's what he's ultimately talking about in all of these different paragraphs here by the time we get to the end, is understanding that all of this existence is impermanent. And then don't cling to it, because if you cling to any of this stuff, craving for it to be permanent, now you're going to experience discontentedness. So let me know what questions you guys have here on this chapter. Okay, I don't see any questions anywhere. So now we'll go to chapter 70. This is the last one for the day. I don't know, Vibhav, is that a question that you have?
Yeah, I guess the question, I had a question on this concentration and clinging. I guess I think we've talked about this before, is like, how do you develop that perception, or like can you just please go back to the previous chapter? Like, I guess the difficulty for me is to understand how to develop this concentration by like not holding on to the excitement. So even though like not trying to really seek excitement or trying to hold on to it, it still seems kind of difficult to kind of sometimes not feel things or like not hold on to it. So that the line sometimes not very clear when you're in the mind, when you're not able to see clearly when you're holding on to something or you're excited about something.
Yeah, this is the development of your mindfulness, that your mindfulness needs to be well developed in order to be able to see that. Because as long as your mind is clinging and holding on to things, you can't be concentrated because it's trying to hold on to all these different things and your mind's not going to be focused and concentrated. So you need to develop your mindfulness or awareness of mind so you can see the mind's pulling and you can see the mind's holding on and clinging, because that's what's hindering you from the concentration. It's like your mind is kind of pulling in all these different opposite directions. And again, excuse me, and it can't stay focused and concentrated in the present moment because it's being pulled over here and over there and over there and over there and over there and over there. So it's by eliminating that clinging that allows you to stay focused and concentrated. But you won't even be able to see your own clinging if you don't have mindfulness well developed. And that's where you need to work on that and be able to then be able to eliminate those clinging and the craving that the mind's doing so that there can then be concentration.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. All right, I think that Pat would like to read this last chapter for today. Go ahead, sir. Or maybe Kristen. Not sure. Kristen, was that a question or was that a volunteering to read?
Yeah, it was just a question. So I had an experience this week of excitement, and there was I had the thought went through my mind of, oops, your mind's feeling really excited right now. And I was trying to let go of it. It was a good excitement, like there's good things going on. But I noticed the mind get really excited, and I did get sort of distracted, and the mind started to kind of go in many directions. And so what I tried to do, and I don't know if this was the right thing, but just to try and focus on the thing that was in front of me in the very moment, so that I can kind of get away from the thoughts and the excitement of what was going on, but just to kind of focus on literally where I was in that very moment, and just try to distract myself. Is that kind of a good way to sort of handle that in that moment, or should I be doing other things?
Yeah, that's the enlightenment factor of concentration. So remember, when the mind's excited, overactive, that's where you bring in the tranquility, the concentration, and the equanimity. So what you did there is you arose the enlightenment factor of concentration, which is going to help you to now stop the mind from bouncing all over the place because of its excitement.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yep, that's perfect. All right, Mr. Pat, you're up.
The first jhana is secure from danger and Mara. So too monks, when distant from sense desires, distant from unwholesome mental states, enters and resides in the first jhana, which is with thinking and pondering, based in seclusion, filled with excitement and joy. On that occasion, it occurs to the monk, now I am secure from danger, and Mara cannot do anything to me. It also occurs to Mara, the evil one, now the monk is secure against danger, and I cannot do anything to him. In reference to the second jhana, the third jhana, and the fourth jhana are explained in the same repetitive phrases. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, sir. So this being of Mara, the Buddha refers to Mara as the evil one. This is in some traditions referred to as the devil or Satan or Lucifer. This is a real actual being. It's a formless being who's interested in causing calamity in the world. And this being and beings operating on its behalf can attempt to influence you to make unwise decisions. It's ultimately your wisdom in your decision or lack of wisdom in your unwise decision that's going to lead to any particular result that you experience. But this being can try to influence you to make unwise decisions. But by the time you get to the first jhana, this being understands that you have a certain amount of wisdom, you have a certain amount of concentration and focus in the mind, that this being can't influence you any longer. So the Buddha refers to this as blindfolding Mara, or that you are now secure from this danger of this being of Mara. So I don't know if you've ever had any interaction with this being, or if you are even aware that you've had interaction with this being, but this isn't something to believe in. This isn't something to be scared of or worried about, but this being can try to influence you, but it's ultimately your own wisdom of knowing what's wise or unwise that's going to lead you to wise decision making and experiencing wholesome results. But this being is going to try to influence you until you get to the first jhana. And when you're in that first jhana, now you can't be influenced any longer. And the way that this being does that is through your mind, is that this being can actually try to insert thoughts into your mind. That's one way that it does it. Or there can be beings, even human beings, who are around you who have been influenced by this being of Mara, and now they're trying to influence you. Like, hey, like we can steal from the company. Do you see all these pens and notebooks and all these office supplies? Like, let's get those and take them home, and we can use them at our home. Or some other thing like this, right? You could have individual people who are trying to influence you, maybe to drink and use drugs, or have sexual misconduct, or steal, or things like this. So this being Mara can do that by putting thoughts into your mind, but you can also have other beings that are actually doing that on Mara's behalf. And you need to have the wisdom to know what's wise and unwise, so you're not influenced by that. Because if you make an unwise decision, it's not Mara that's going to experience the results, it's you that's going to experience those results. If your friend influences you to use drugs and alcohol, or steal from the office supplies, your decision to do those things is going to impact you. It's going to affect you. So you would like to have the wisdom to know what's wise and unwise. And when you cultivate enough of that wisdom through the Eightfold Path, you'll eventually get into the jhanas, and that's where you're now secure from this being, that it's not going to try to influence you because it knows that you're too wise. But in those jhanas, they're not permanent, that if you become complacent, you can regress out of them. So you would like to keep on going until you get to the first stage of enlightenment. Once you're there, the mind won't regress backwards. So let me know what questions you guys have here on this particular chapter. You can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and ask any questions that you like. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions anywhere. So I'm going to end by just saying thank you to all of you guys. Thank you for your interest to learn and grow and develop. And at the same time, I'd like to let you know that next week, I'm not going to be able to teach this class based on the timing of where I'm going to be and what I need to be doing here in the US. So the next 10 chapters, which is chapters 71 through 80, you can explore those on your own, because I've taught this class many times. This program has been recorded. So you can actually watch the recording from the previous class through our YouTube channel. It's on there. You can just search for it. And if you have any issues trying to find it, just let me know and I'll send it to you. But then the following week after that, I'll be back in Thailand. I will have just arrived. It'll be April 11th. My intention is to teach that class. We'll see. I'll have just been on a very long flight back to the US, and I usually can sleep on flights, so I should be able to teach that class Saturday night, because I'm getting into Chiang Mai in the morning on Saturday. But let's see, but if you guys don't see me for any reason on the 11th of April, you'll know that, oh, David's recovering from his flight. But the next week, I know for sure I can't teach, because I'm going to be teaching in Dallas, Texas. So you guys could watch the recording. So thank you all for participating. Thank you for reading. Thank you for your questions. And perhaps I'll see you guys in one of these future classes. Be well and take care. Sawadee Kap.
Thank you again for watching. Enjoy your meditation. Look forward to seeing you online and answering any questions that you might have. Thank you so much.